Hello and welcome to another edition of the TC Experience. It's Friday the 13th of March, so yes, in the current climate, Friday the 13th does feel like it could be a doomsday scenario when you see everything of what's going on around the world. Now, when I recorded this yesterday, it was bitterly cold. It was very windy, very cold. The day before had been quite mild and spring-like, and today it's gone back to a very pleasantly mild day and a very, very soft breeze that you can hardly feel. So I say that because the weather feels like it's just as changeable in March in England as it is every day, hour by hour, with this coronavirus now labelled on Wednesday by the World Health Organization as a pandemic. And as I expected, it's really kicked off a whole chain of events since then, where everything has been ramped up massively. Countries are reacting over the last few days in terms of their restrictions or bans or closures, and with major events, sporting events, concert events, theatres, cinemas, films. Everything is dramatically changing. So many things are being cancelled or postponed. And yesterday, they called off the Australian Grand Prix 2 hours before first practice was due to begin. And the European Champions League, all matches postponed until early April. Same for the Europa League. Following on from that, this afternoon, all English Football Premier League matches have now been postponed until early April. The Arsenal football manager has coronavirus. Some players in Premier League football teams have coronavirus. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, has self-isolated, as his wife has been tested positive for coronavirus. And things are really fast moving at a pace now, hour by hour, with these new developments. And I wanted just to do one correction on the figures that I gave yesterday, because I have been just doing a bit of checking on Google before I spoke to camera today. And yesterday I cited the deaths figure as 8,000. Well, as of the live figures, as I speak on a Friday afternoon, the actual cases now are almost 140,000 worldwide, and the deaths figure worldwide is 5,120, of which the vast majority of that figure is still for China. But of course Italy is fast catching up. Their figure as of this afternoon has now exceeded 1,000 in Italy, and the number of cases has just gone over 15,000. So that is the latest, and Italy has now become the highest country for cases and deaths outside of China. And they've overtaken Iran, which we thought had it bad, and South Korea, which had it bad, but Italy has now way exceeded that. And so what I wanted to talk about a little bit here is also about keeping things in a matter of perspective, because there are all kinds of predictions about where this could go. And I've seen predictions that in this country it could be maybe 80% of the population will catch it. I saw a moment ago that in America they're predicting it could be 214 million or more. So you can imagine how the people see that, and there's a panic that sets in. But I've also seen a lot of experts, medical and scientific experts, interviewed on TV over the last few days. And where I'm leading to here is I want to talk about, there's the science, but then there's also the political and government reactions, and also the human behaviour and reactions. And I think we really ought to look a lot more into that side of it, especially human behaviour and reactions to all of this. And it's about context and perspective, because the medical experts, the scientific experts, they have all been saying they really don't know for sure where this is going to go. Now, these are experts that have been involved in pandemics and diseases of the past, such as SARS and MERS and Ebola. And so they know about these patterns, they know about the modelling, and they're talking about all kinds of different scenarios that can happen with coronavirus, but they all say we really don't know. They really don't know where this is going to go because we're in uncharted territory. And they also say that no one else can predict where this is going to go, but they also add it's not just about the virus itself, it is about the decisions that governments and politicians take. It's also about human behaviour and our actions and reactions. And they can't entirely, well, they themselves may be scientists, but they can't really predict that. So there's many unknowns. But let's stick with some of the knowns so far for perspective and context, because we have, by the way, sorry if I'm out of breath, I'm actually recording this while I'm on a bit of a upward ascent. And as a digression here, what I do, I go out every afternoon for an afternoon walk, and I like to walk up lots of hills and steps as well, and that's all part of keeping me fit and healthy, keeping my my cardio rate up as well. And all of these features here, it's about eating, it's about exercise, but all of that I believe gives me a level of protection, not against catching the virus itself. I am expecting, for me it's a case of I'll probably catch it, so be it, I ride with it, I then self-isolate for the required 14 days, I don't feel well for a while, I recover, but then I will build up the antibodies, so I'm going to take a change of direction here, then I will build the antibodies that will give me hopefully immunity for the future. But coming back to my other point about perspective, so yes, there are all these doomsday scenarios and predictions I see flying around there. I'm sorry, I know I'm not meant to touch my face, that's another instruction, but I have a tickle under my nose, and yes, I do know that I need not to touch anything else and go and wash my hands, and I am thoroughly washing my hands for more than 20 seconds many times a day now. So it is changing my mindset and patterns of behaviour, and I do think this is going to change the mindset and patterns of behaviour of so many people for the longer term. I don't think this is just going to be short term where it comes and it goes and everybody reverts back to the normal of before. I think beyond this there's going to become many kinds of new types of normal in many ways, and it won't be just around hygiene. I think in many other aspects there are going to be some real changes to our daily lives, our personal, our living lives, and our professional and working lives. So this virus is going to make such a massive impact in more ways than one. Back to perspective, I'm sorry, I know I keep going off tangent a little bit here and some digressions, but coming back to perspective and context. And so the total, I looked this up, so the total number of cases worldwide as of now, as of Friday afternoon 13th of March, is just under a few hundred short of 140,000. And the number of deaths worldwide is 5,120. And as a death rate percentage, that's just under 3.7%. Now that percentage also includes Italy. Now Italy has a much higher percentage because their number of cases has exceeded 15,000 now and just exceeded a little over 1,000 of deaths to just over 15,000. That works out at around 7.4%. So that is double the death rate overall, but of course their percentage is pushing it up overall worldwide. And there are a number of unique factors with Italy, and I have been seeing that what happens there are some unique scenarios around Italy that we don't have in many other countries, and that includes in the UK, because the way that the coronavirus has broken out there has been of a different pattern and modelling to many other countries and the UK. They have a far higher elderly population, and it's the elderly that are most vulnerable to this. They have a far higher number of those that have underlying health problems, and it should be stated that the vast majority of the deaths are either elderly people over 70 or over 80, and those with underlying health conditions. And so you think logically the focus should be about protecting these groups of people, and for the rest of us, accept, okay, we will probably get the virus, we'll get over it, just like with a flu or with cold, but of course we have to be mindful about this self-isolation and social distancing as well, so that there is a protection of those vulnerable groups. But I also have to say, I don't know how it is in other countries, but it fascinates me about the British attitude here with the elderly people. I've seen a number of vox pops on the TV news in different situations, out on the high street, out in shopping centres, in elderly people's homes, their own homes, and in care homes. So I've seen them in different towns, in different situations. And what strikes me is a commonality about their view of this. And I've seen people in their 80s and 90s interviewed. And here are some of the comments that I've heard these people say. Things like, well, when my time is up, my time is up. Another comment, this is from a chap who was 88. I've had a good innings, so when my time comes, it comes. And I've seen others that say, yes, okay, well, I know we always used to say in bad situations and war situations, keep calm and carry on. Well, now the mantra is, I don't think he used mantra, he was 94. I can't remember the word that he used, but he said, what we say now is, keep calm and wash your hands. And he smiled, and I just love this. There's a real stoical attitude. The British public, the elderly, are so stoical in how they see these situations. And I really understand how through the Second World War, which were really terrible times, they say in this situation is the worst crisis for for Britain since the Second World War. And I understand that there's a real stoicism, that sturdiness with the elderly people. I really get it now, that spirit, that real resilient spirit inside that saw this country through some really troubled times, hair-raising times, and I really love that. And I just hope to see that with the majority and the younger generation, they have a lot more of that spirit. I do believe there is some of that, but there is another side of panic buying and crazy buying going on, and people stocking up their trolleys and oversupplying, and taking it too far and thinking more about themselves or their own household, but not really thinking overall about the common good. And there's another side, of course, is about countries and politicians who are looking at self-interest, national interest, their own political interests, about votes, where it will be in democracies, dictatorships, about gaining a stronger hold over its population and monitoring. They all have some kind of self-interest there. And I was reading an article earlier in the New York Times that said that the WHO, the World Health Organization, they did have a plan for a pandemic like this. The problem is that most countries, they're not following the plan. So there was a structure, there was a plan for coordination, but most countries are just not following the plan in place, and they are not coordinating with WHO. And unfortunately, they weren't given the powers. When they drew all of this up, they made sure there were clauses in the contract that took a lot of the bites, took a lot of the teeth away from WHO, and gave more of the powers to the sovereign states. And that's why they're taking individual actions. That's why there are so many different types of responses in different countries. They're not notifying WHO in advance of the actions, the bans, the closures that they're taking. They're not notifying them of the travel bans they're imposing. So for example, the US had a stroke, nobody saw it coming. They just said, okay, as of midnight tonight, Friday, there's a travel ban on all European countries, with the exception of the UK and Ireland, to fly into the US. So yeah, it's there's something there about the behaviour, and it's human behaviour, because remember, politicians are human beings, and they also act for their own self-interest as well, and protection of their own status and their power. So my view about all of this is that there's more to this than the coronavirus itself. There's more to it than the science behind the coronavirus. I think we should explore and examine much more about the actions of governments, politicians, professionals, and all of us, we as human beings, on how we react to this situation, and maybe across the age groups as well. So yes, this is a longer video than normal today, but this is such a big topic, and I did start talking about this a few weeks back, before this became a hot debating talking point, and now more and more people are talking about it on social media. But we do mean to be mindful of getting our information through reliable sources and not just taking at face value. I mean, I'm just seeing so much information coming my way about all the things we should do and not do, but I'm thinking, well, we should establish the credibility of these sources before we take at face value everything that's being passed our way on social media. So be careful out there about the information that you are seeing and the sources of those information, and about verification and about credibility, before you take that as I suppose as some kind of truth. And I say some kind of truth because even the truth is really variable right now, and even the experts are finding it challenged to actually pinpoint what is the exact truth. And I'll leave you with this thought in the current crisis I suppose we're in now, because that's how it feels, and there's a panic that goes with this pandemic, is the truth of today can be a quite different truth of tomorrow. So we have to keep updated with events, and thank you so much for watching. These are my thoughts about what is going on, but I would love your feedback. I will post this on Facebook, and I really would very much appreciate your feedback on my comments and what your thoughts and views are about this. So thank you for watching, take care, be safe, and toodaloo.